Yes, those earphones you have are terrible. Don't use those ever again in life. Those are ridiculous.
You know what? Thank you.
You should know that from the bottom of my heart, Marva. I mean that.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. So, apologies to anyone who may actually be paying attention. We were both mobile last week, and our best intentions, we never
The feast
were
is
on
in
the
the
same
house.
time schedule.
Marva, you froze up on me there. Did you hear me?
The what's in the house? What did you say?
Oh,
No, it
so,
locked up. What's in the
oh,
house?
so the feast is in the house. She's one of a friend of mine. She's watching. I was in your state last
Oh,
week.
okay.
I was in your state, and you were in mine.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know,
Yeah, we kind of crossed paths. Well, wait. Um, that's really kind of backwards.
what was
But because my state is Tennessee, but whatever.
that? No, my state is to this. Oh well,
I have I have way more documentation that proves that than not. So there you
I'm
go.
not asking for a birth certificate or nothing like. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Okay, so your travels went well. You made it back
The
safely.
Lord bless. Everything went very, very well. Very, very well.
Very good. Very good.
I'm eager to talk about this.
Um,
I'm eager to jump on this topic here. We got a good one today.
you're eager to, I don't know if I'm eager for it or not,
Hmm.
but let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes because I'm gonna I'm gonna be prepared with some questions for you because I'm interested to see what your process is on this
I don't
one.
have thoughts about anything.
Yeah, you have you. Okay, so you don't have thoughts about anything. You are relying on a reliable source.
Right. I'm gonna rely on a reliable source. I haven't thoughts about anything.
Okay.
So you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
For those that don't know, our topic it came out of a something we were talking about week before last, and I asked him a question, and he reworded my question to come up with this week's title. And so the theme for this week is the will of God and your love life.
Right. The will of God in your
And,
love life.
and that being said, are we starting with the scripture, or are we start where are we starting? Since you have no opinion, I'm assuming we're relying on the biblical text.
I guess we can start there. We can start there and move from there. I mean, that's always a good place to start. I think what you'll find out though is as we start with the Bible that there are going to be several points of departure because we're not talking about
For you and I?
no, no, that's just think in general. I
Okay.
think in general. For example, when we talk, let's say we reference a text like Esther. All right, let's say we reference that text.
You really like Esther. You keep coming back
Now,
to Esther.
I'm not actually,
Okay.
I'm not a very big fan of the book in general, but I think it bears to be, it should be talked about. For example, when Esther is looking for love advice, and not love advice in a in a romantic way, but in a how do
Right.
I get the
Practical.
in a practical way, which we would call sensual way. She goes to the king's chamberlain. Now, the question needs to come up, and we can if we did a study on the book of Esther, we would see that one night with the king is not the generic piece of Hollywood movie making that it is, but Esther is dealing with a man who he's a Persian, and he does what Persians do. And Persian culture had been at one point in time corrupted to some extent in a way to where certain taboo sexuality was was not as taboo in that culture. So when Esther goes to the Chamberlain,
There was a nice walk
it
around.
wasn't.
It was a nice walk in the park.
So when Esther goes to the Chamberlain and says, "Hey, how do I get the king's attention? What do I do? What is the king like?" And the Chamberlain, the eunuch, the male eunuch, tells her,
A eunuch giving her advice.
right, right, tells her, what the king likes. Well, how do you know what the king likes, Mister Eunuch? Unless you are a participator in what the king likes. And these are the types of places when we start reading the text, we have so.
No,
Hold
no,
on, hold on, slow down,
no.
slow down, slow down, slow
You
down.
can't you can't do that.
No, 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 no. Let me finish what I'm saying. I'll go back. I'll go back and explain it to make it right. But these are the type of places that when you start references these places as Bible advice for men and women, it gets kind of dicey right in there. Now, just so that my Bible scholars won't be so offended, read the first chapter of Esther. All right, you see the encounter with the king and all his boys. The king has all his boys come from all the kingdom around. They send the women off somewhere with Vashti. Vashti's doing her thing with all the women. The king's doing all the thing with the guys. The king calls the eunuchs in and says, "Hey, do every man's pleasure." Now, they have tried to reinterpret that, misinterpret it, and everything to mean anything but what it obviously means. These men spend how many weeks with each other, partying and getting it on. And then one day the king says, "My wife is beautiful, and she wants you. I want my wife to come and show you how beautiful she is." And Vashti, who is the only character of any real moral clarity, Vashti says, "I'm not going to parade myself around all you uh, men that's been doing what y'all been doing with each other all this time. I'm not getting ready to do that." And so then what happens is these men who've been with each other tell him, "Hey, get your woman in check, or she gonna cause us problems. She gonna cause everybody problems." And what happens? The only character with any moral clarity, with any real moral clarity, Vashti, is thrown away in the first few seconds of the book.
I mean, really,
Yeah,
like what she makes, what maybe 10 verses or
exactly.
something.
They throw her away.
Like as soon as her name is mentioned, like 2 verses later,
She's
she's
gone.
she's done.
Right,
She's
right.
done.
And then the problem is what you have here is you have a book in the Bible where God does not allow His name to be mentioned. People say, well, God is, God,
That was gonna be my next
well,
question. You gotta, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
God is the invisible hand in the book, and it goes without saying that He is. You can say that. That's one way of looking at it. But why does God single this book out as the one book to not mention His name?
Pray
Okay.
tell.
Well, the reason is because when Israel has a problem, they don't go to God for a solution. Mordecai sits outside. The people say, well, Mordecai with the sackcloth and ashes. He was protesting. He wasn't praying. He didn't go to God in prayer.
He was
He
pouting,
was
though.
well, no, he was protesting. Look what he was. It's a public spectacle. He's outside the kings. He's outside the gate, sackcloth and ashes, making this big scene, protesting what the king is doing. And what you don't have here is you never have a moment where God is consulted on anything. Mordecai leans on his niece's sexuality to get the king's attention. And when Esther gets to the king, and the king, if I die, I die. They do that. That's the.
Oh yeah, they
Oh,
preach
they
that
preach
really
that. If I
hard.
die, I die. Sugar, you wasn't about to die. You just got the secret from this chamberlain. And how does the chamberlain know what the king like anyway? But anyway, let me finish what I'm saying. So when she does all this, that, and the third, it doesn't help anyway because
It doesn't
no,
help.
no, Haman has already got the plan in. They don't have a CNN. They don't have no CNN broadcast. So when the king says, "Oh, thou shalt not,"
And then no
right,
iPhone news alert.
"Thou shalt not kill any of the Jews." Well, hold up, king. We can't tell nobody in 2 days. And so what happens is Mordecai ends up having to fight anyway. And at the end of the book, what happens? Mordecai is dressed up and playing around with the king the same way the boys were dressed up and playing around with the king at the very beginning of the book. So God is saying, I'm not going to honor this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You guys made it out. My promise is true. Y'all made it out. But y'all didn't ask me nothing. Y'all didn't do it my way. And the mess you're doing, the immoral mess you're doing in this book, I will not sanction it. I will not sanction it. I will not say it's okay. I will not let you hold this up as something that I said do. Now we say, well, God, God, listen, this is the problem I had with the Sunday school lesson 2 weeks ago when they said God used lies and deception to get his way, to work his will. I was sitting there reading that Sunday school book like, what in the world? And then I remembered it was a Kosher Sunday school book, so I said, well, there might be something to it. Preaching the use of lies and deception for God to get his way. God don't got to use lies and deception to get his way. Anyway, that's a whole different story. But
Yeah, you are so on a bird walk.
that's why when we start using these types of books, we got to be careful. You got to be careful. I mean, are you going to let me reference, Ruth with Naomi telling Ruth, "Hey, yo, what you do is wait till my man gets good and drunk. When he gets good and drunk,
I
go
hate now, you
hide in
know
the
what?
field."
But now that one, now I'm probably fascinated with that one the way that you're fascinated with Esther, because to understand who Ruth is, she's a Moabite, and they keep bringing this point up because this point is very
Right?
significant. And it's the same point that you're making about the context of the Persians. The Moabites are known for some
They
stuff.
ain't good people.
And the history of Moab and all of his lineage carry some sense this identity, and they keep bringing that up when they talk to, when they're talking about Ruth, when Boaz asks, well, who is she, and he gives her all of this advice, stay in my field, you'll be safe, blah blah blah. But when her mother-in-law tells her specifically, exactly, wait till he gets drunk, wait till he goes to sleep, really?
No, 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 no. Hold on. I want you to say it right, Barbara. Wait till he gets drunk. Go hide and lay at his feet. And when he sees you, he will tell you what to do.
He will tell you what to do.
You can't pay money for that type of comedy. I mean, Eddie Murphy ain't made jokes that good. I'm like, you dang right,
He
Delma.
will tell you
I
what
bet
to
he will tell
do.
you what to do.
And then there's this whole wait. Now, no, it's not done at that point, because then it's okay, tell me what you want. Oh, okay, now we got to get you out of here before anybody sees that you're
Right. Because
here.
we gonna do what you came to do. But I can't let nobody know about it. Hey, wait. And watch this, Barbara. Watch this part right here. And just in case, let me see if I can give you to somebody else. I really don't want to be bothered with your young tail.
But if he don't want you, I'll
But if
keep
you
you.
don't want you, though, I'll keep you.
I'm gonna go talk to
Let me go
him
check on my. Let me check
first,
my
because he
one.
really he really should have. He really
Yeah,
should have
he the
you.
one that should have you. I mean, I don't. Don't
But
worry. I won't
if
tell him what happened tonight.
he ain't gonna have you,
Right.
then
I,
I I'll do what I have to do.
I won't tell nobody what happened tonight. It's just between it be our little secret.
But see, now her mother-in-law realizes that, oh, her mother-in-law is the one that realizes this opportunity. Now, even though Ruth is a Moabite, her mother-in-law is the one that says, "Hey, let me tell you what you need to do." That
Now, do me
um
one favor, Marv. Do me one favor. Now,
okay.
back that understanding up back to our discussion about the Chamberlain with Esther. How is it that Naomi knows what the men want? Because she's a woman, right? It makes sense.
She's a
It makes
woman.
sense for her. It makes sense for her to know, right?
She's an older woman, so
It
she
makes sense for
she
her to know, right? She's been experienced. It makes sense for her to know, right? So then I ask you the question again: how does the Chamberlain know what the men want? All right, go
you
ahead,
know
go ahead.
what?
So anyway, so the point is,
Because he was standing outside the door.
right? That's it. He was watching. He was watching.
He was at the door waiting to see what the king
He
needed. He wasn't
was
inside the
right.
door.
Exactly. Yeah.
He was
That's why he.
outside.
That's why he told the other. That's why the king told the other eunuchs, "Do every man's pleasure."
No, that was just make sure that they wouldn't get
Basketballs.
thirsty, that they had enough
Make sure they
Kool-Aid.
had no
Yeah.
Kool-Aid and basketballs to play basketball with football.
Yeah. Some chicken
And
wings or
chicken wings.
something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Do every man's pleasure mean.
Chicken wings and
That's
Kool-Aid. That's
it.
all a man needs,
That's
right?
all they need. In the book of Esther, anyway.
Okay, I don't know. Are we talking about our topic or are we
Oh,
just
oh no,
rambling?
we are. No,
We're on topic,
we're
I
on
think.
topic.
Sad to
We're on
say.
topic.
Sad to say, I think we're on topic.
So.
So,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh well.
No, you
Oh
go,
well.
because I'm letting you lead this train.
You just want me to get in trouble, but I don't mind jumping out there with this one. So here's the thing, Marvin. The thing about it is, we have to determine whether or not God has a will, and whether or not that personal will that will God has is personal, and then whether or not that personal will is a regulation of our love life. Because if God has a will, and this will is personal, and it is a regulation of our love life, then why, as a divorced man, just so you understand, I'm not on my high horse, as a divorced man, why is it we have this instance of so many different divorces, relationships that end for any number of reasons? I've not met a person yet who got married or who didn't say, I believe this is God, this is who God has for me. Now, if God had them for you, and at least you said you did, and if I argue with you and said you don't know the voice of God, you would cut my head off. But when that boy went inside your head, we had a different. I don't know if God said it that time. So, we got to discuss these things from that standpoint, because I think sometimes we put things in God's hands that He ain't trying to be blamed for. you know, God says something like, "A man findeth a wife, he findeth a good thing." But it sounds like God in that statement has delineated a few rules already. And one of the rules is that a man need to be looking. The other rule seems to be that a woman needs to be found. Whether that means she needs to be hidden or secreted away, I don't know. But it does mean that she needs to be found, perhaps even pursued. The other rule seems to be that men need to be in the act of looking. And then the next rule seems to be that once you found something, the pursuit is over. You found a good thing. Didn't say you found good things. Man findeth wives. Unless, of course, you're Solomon. You
You
know,
couldn't just let what you said stand, could
I,
you?
you
You just
know.
couldn't. You couldn't let it
Now,
stand.
remember that, Marva. I don't think that I've never been one who thought that polygamy or having multiple wives was a good thing. That's women got this thing all twisted. They think that if a man wants multiple wives, that somehow or another you know, he's being uh, freaky or whatever. He's being stupid. If you want more than one wife,
Well, he's divided.
it's
He can't be anything but
it's
divided.
more than, I mean, exactly. I mean, think about it, Marvin. When you have multiple wives, you're not talking about a wife and three girlfriends. We're talking about three wives. You can't halfway deal with one wife. What the world are you gonna do with two or three?
Hide.
I'm talking about run away, run away, run.
I gotta go to work.
I know I can stand. You working overtime again? Yes, I'm working overtime again. I'm working overtime. Good God Almighty, Jesus! What you gonna do with three wives? You don't have to want to deal with one. So, you know, I think we have to kind of dispel some of these
So
things.
let me take a different
Go for
spin
it.
on what you're saying, because one of the things I do talk about in my book, which I'm sure is not going to go over well with women, and I don't care, is
Why are you so
that
anti-woman?
the atmosphere of the home is very important. And like you were mentioning, although you were mentioning it in a totally different context, um, the atmosphere of the home is very important. And I'm just an advocate, that, women have to be attentive to that. I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care how much money you make. If you want the job title of a wife,
Yes,
the atmosphere of the home is
the breakfast bread.
is something that is very important. Um, and I won't back down from that at all, because I know what it's like to come home to a home that is not have the right atmosphere, and I don't wish that on anybody.
Talk about
Um,
that. Talk about that attentive word. Talk about attentive. Like, what do you mean when you say attentive? You're not saying being a participator in home. You mean being attentive. So talk about what you mean with that.
well, because I think our society has tried to shift some of the standard and responsibility of what happens in the home. That there's this somehow we are same thing that's supposed to happen, and I don't believe that men and women bring the same thing to the table. Um, and so what a woman brings to her home is very important. The woman sets the atmosphere of the home. Um, and that's, I mean, that's huge. And I believe that so much so because I watched what my grandmother did. Um, I watched the things that she was very intentional about to um, to set the atmosphere in her home. So, and I think a lot of in just talking to people, because I get, I'm in the hair salon, so I talk to women a lot, and I'm always amazed at what women don't realize they bring to the table in their relationships.
So
Um,
talk about that then. Talk about that. We'll get back to attentive. I like standing responsibility. What do you mean? What they bring to the table? What do they bring to the table?
they bring femininity. Or they should. Let me say it that way. They should bring femininity. And in that is not some standard across the board, because God created every single person as an individual. And every individual is created with certain gifts and interests and characteristics and style, and all of those things are becoming to what that person brings into their home, into their relationship. So, um, and this is also why I think we haven't gotten there yet, but this is also part of the reason why I don't think um, who you end up with is helter skelter. I really don't.
Mm.
But I'll get back to that later. So in what women bring, if women try to emulate men, then you really miss out on bringing what God has gifted you to bring to your relationship.
Mm.
Because a man doesn't need manness,
Mm.
he needs that contrast. Um, and that doesn't mean that you won't have similar interests and similar. You should have some things in common. You should have some elements of compatibility. But the way women process information, the way women bring perspective to situations is very different. And so I think if women start attempting to quote unquote do everything the same way a man does,
Yes,
well,
thank you.
that's not what being a woman brings to the table.
Well, it
There's a way that women are,
right.
that's what you bring to the table. And I think most men would say that's what they admire about women is the part that they really kind of don't understand.
Amen. I agree. We do admire that. The opposite energy is a good contrast. I oftentimes say that I lately. Ooh, Marvin's about to get deep right here. Lately, Marvin, I've met a lot of our sisters, church girls too, that have had four ways and journeys to the other side. That is, they start messing around with other women, and these are church girls, and they do this and they mess around with them. And then they come back and they want to date men again because they find out that they're not getting whatever they thought they were missing, uh, and they find out that they really weren't gay. They just were kind of curious. I'll use that word for like a colloquial. Let me finish before you jump in there, because I know you got something to say about this one. We talked about it before. I know you got something to say about it. But what they consistently said is that, you know, they feel sorry for men because we have to date women. And women don't understand that men, we are equipped to handle the whatever you guys consider crazy, whatever you guys consider off kilter about yourselves, we are equipped to handle that. And we are incentivized to handle your quirkiness because there are things that we will get from you that we can't get anywhere else. All right?
That is an incentive,
But
isn't
that's
it?
right. But if you're with another woman, you just getting the same thing you always had. There ain't nothing, there's no incentive to be different or to be accommodating. Yes, you could be yourself, but that comes with a
It's
price.
like offering a chicken farmer some more chickens.
Or fertilized eggs.
Yeah.
Just sit on this for a while. It's going to become another chicken. Just hold on, you'll see.
I know you already have 200 chickens, but here's
Here's
another
another one.
one.
So,
Ay, ay, ay.
now here's the thing. Thank God they come to their senses because I think women can do that. I know men that have dealt with homosexuality, and I never advise them at any point to start talking to women if God brings them out of that stuff. I tell them to remain celibate. That might be wrong, but I tell them to remain celibate. That they shouldn't even.
Now, do we get to ask you your reason why?
Yeah, I'll tell you why. I tell them to remain celibate because I think they shouldn't even tickle that side of their personality. Because until their flesh has been reconditioned, and
Oh, okay.
they are
Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
totally sure.
I agree.
You
Yeah. I see that. I
don't
see where
even
you
tickle that
Yeah.
side of who you are. Because once
Yeah.
you
I can get
and
that.
then you go mess up some young girl or some girl whatever who had she wanted a man her whole life, and you sitting here, you got the opposite feelings. You trying to you know be with this woman, and you end up messing her life up because you mess her mind up because she anyway. So that's my advice to them. But women, on the other hand,
Now,
I don't give
from
that
from
advice.
the from the spiritual standpoint, um, yeah, from a spiritual standpoint, I definitely agree with what you're saying. Because you cannot be in certain types of situations and it not have an effect on you spiritually as well as emotionally and
And
naturally.
mentally,
So yeah.
you know.
Um, yeah. So let me go back and I guess start at where I thought we would begin.
How you gonna have a place where you thought
Uh,
we would begin and then ask me to start?
Cause I really thought you were gonna. I
And I
really thought
did.
I. No, I know, but I thought you were going to start at a really profound
Oh no,
place
no, not
of some
today, not
sort.
today. I'll be
And
profound
I
next
was and
week.
I was going to be the one that was going to reel you back into
Oh no,
reality
no,
and say,
no
but what about real life situations?
I'm
And
doing
you
real life
just
situations,
went straight to,
real life.
you know what? You went straight to the thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, so let me say this, and I'll let you go back and sweep it and clean it up if you want to. I
We'll
don't
see what
mind.
it says.
Well, first of all, I am truly a fan of endogamy.
Okay.
So,
You need to explain that.
um,
Explain what that is to our audience.
okay. Um, Within your tribe,
There you go.
within your
There you go.
people. I'm trying to think of the most simplistic, like not make it difficult.
You don't.
Within your context, within your tribe. Is that fair?
You don't.
Can we stay that?
You don't believe in those mulattoes, those octoroon Negroes. Huh?
You know what? Stop it. No, that's not what I'm
All
saying.
right. I just want to make sure.
I think you can probably look at me
I know.
clearly
I
and
know. I know. I know. I know. Go
you know
Go ahead.
what? Stop it. stop that. Stop that.
Go ahead, Mom.
So, but I do believe from a spiritual standpoint, let's say that. Look, can I, since you want to just tear my whole
I'm not,
theory
I'm
down
tearing
here,
nothing down.
spiritual endogamy. I believe in spiritual endogamy. So, and what I mean by that
You should only
is,
date culture people.
stop it. I don't know that I would say only culture people, but they would definitely have to be.
Right, right.
They would have to be Pentecostal. On,
All
because, and here's why. Here's why. Um, because at where I am in my life, I am so far up the road that I cannot at this point in my life begin to teach you step one, step two. There's 66 books in the Bible. I can't do that right now.
could they be
And
could they be apostolic Pentecostal, or they have to be Trinitarian Pentecostal?
would you stay on the
Go
point?
ahead. All right.
Stay
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry. I'm
point.
sorry. Go ahead.
So in that you just can't help yourself. You can't help it.
Go ahead, Mom.
So in that context, I believe that God is very intentional in his creation. And so for me, that works into a lot of things that fall into my understanding of myself as one who is called into ministry. Now, this may or may not stand for people that are not called into ministry, but this is where I stand because I believe if God has made so much of an investment in preparing you for a certain type of life's journey, that he is also has another person who is prepared to be in that journey with you.
Okay.
And in that, to say that God is as intentional as he is to number the hairs on your head. And then he would impart all of these things into who you are as a person, into your life story. I just don't believe that that gets attached to helter skelter and still just goes along with God's plan or God's will.
Okay.
Now, can you miss that? I think you can.
Okay.
I think you truly can because the job of the adversary is to send counterfeits, to send almost not quite, to send could be's. And those are very much real
So
distractions.
you don't think God?
But I,
Let me ask you a question, because I know you're saying
uh-huh.
it's not haphazard, but you don't think God gives you options? Like you don't think God works in types? Like he says, Marva likes this type of man. I will send her 4 or 5 options of a type and see which one she approves of. You don't think God would do that? I guess I should say would do that, but you don't think that's a possibility?
It could be a possibility, but I think even within that, that if God can number the hairs on my head, everything about me is what a certain man needs. And everything about me is looking for what I need from a certain man. Now, can other people meet those needs? Sure,
Okay.
sure. But I think there is a truly a perfect, not that you lack imperfection or humanity, but that God meshes the personalities, the visions, the dreams, the gifts together. I really believe that God has intention. I don't just believe that you can just get Joe Blow and go for it and it work out right. I just think um, that God's investment is God's investment.
Okay, I'm with you on that one.
And so in that, I do believe you can miss it. I do believe you can end up with close not quite. I do believe that you can end up with this is absolutely not it. Um, I don't have
You can marry
a
all those people too, right? You can marry. This is not
not at
it.
one
Oh,
time.
no, no. Go on. You're right. You got it. That's an interruption. Go ahead. I'm sorry. That's what
No,
I
you
got.
see how I deflected
That's what
that
I
one?
got. Go ahead.
Um, so yeah, I think, and that bit now you do bring up another question, because this is the thing that happened for me. Um, I made a horrible mistake when I got married. Horrible mistake. And I own that mistake. But what I also found out was that the people around me told me I had no other option.
Mm.
You doing all right, sir?
And
Yes, I am. Thank you.
so I struggled with that, because you mean to tell me that any mistake I make in my life, you'll tell me that I can be forgiven and that God can help me correct it and fix it. But this one I'm just stuck with? Wait, I need that, because you know me, I start asking questions, and you're gonna have to answer my questions in a way that I understand. And people get frustrated when they can't give you an answer that you understand. But you mean to tell me I can go out here and I can commit a sin and I can say, Lord, I'm sorry, and I'm gonna change and I'm gonna turn around and do better. And God say, oh, okay. But I have to live with this person that is making me miserable, who is causing me to think really bad thoughts, and you're telling me I have to just take this for the rest of my life. I struggled with that. I really, really struggled with
You know,
that.
can I ask you this question? Let me ask you this question.
Sure.
The question is, you know, when you deal with the reality of God's will or one's perspective about God's will and grace, there will be a conflict depending on your view. If you think that God's will is that, like let's say they think God's will was that guy that you were with, it was God's will that y'all were together from the foundations of the earth. And if that's the case, then why do you need grace to fix that mistake or to fix that situation? Or why is it even a question about you leaving if from the foundations of the earth you were supposed to be with this person? How about this question, what if the power of grace is to place us in a to place us with an opportunity to get inside of God's will, because we make a lot of decisions outside of his will. We have a lot of power outside of God's will.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was what, and in getting into the marriage, that was what happened to me. And what I mean by that was, being raised, and my grandmother always said to me, there's a man that needs you for his wife. And I always looked at her and I was like, you was just being so melodramatic.
But you could
But
preach
my
that though.
grandmother,
That would preach.
yeah,
You should do that.
yeah. I mean, but my grandmother was, she always said that to me. And I was young. I was young. I was having a good time. I was like, whatever, you know. But I kind of understand that better. I see that better now as I got older and I started really thinking very intentional about what God is doing in my life, and the people that come into my life. I started understanding a little more about what she was saying. And then Bishop Bell always said, you don't marry for love, you marry for ministry. And I used to always think, what? You know, but so what I do believe is that, just like I was saying at the beginning of this, that I believe God packages very well. I believe God gives you what you need and what you desire in the person that he has for you. I know a lot of people say that the fear factor of, well, maybe he's this and maybe he's that, but maybe he won't be able to meet my needs and maybe he won't be this, that, and the other. I don't think God is like playing a trick. I think that God is very intentional in his creation. And I think the things that I bring to the table, the things I bring to a relationship, there's a man that needs what I bring: my gift, my calling, my personality, my interests, my dislikes. All of that comes to the table because it's who I am. And I believe the same thing for the person who comes into my life. So, yeah, I think you can miss that, but I think there's still um, this intentionality of God's creation that we have to be prayerful and search out.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. See, you want to stop right there. You want me to chime in right there? No, we're gonna chime. We're
Yeah.
gonna back up. We gonna
I'm
back
gonna
up.
leave it
That's
right there
right.
for you.
Yeah. I mean, I could go right.
You're
I could go
welcome.
from right there. That would be no problem. But I'd rather go back to this.
But
But so now, okay, the advice that Bishop Bell, God bless him, nothing against Bishop Bell, great man. Went to his church a few times when I was in college. You know,
get to the point.
don't marry for love, marry for ministry.
Yeah.
Now maybe that's a rule that maybe that rule makes sense for him because that's his life. Maybe that rule would make sense for me, but that rule don't make sense for Ralph Cramden. You know, just regular old Joe who ain't got ministry but definitely got
Well, he was
love.
talking to me. He was talking to people in ministry. He
Oh, that's what
wasn't
he's talking
talking
to. Oh, so
to.
this wasn't like
He wasn't
churchialized
talking. He
advice.
was. Yeah, this wasn't
Oh,
like
okay,
open
okay.
forum. This was
This is closed setting
um
with the preachers. Okay, okay.
this is for people in and but even in that context, the person that you attach your life to, if you have any kind of call to ministry, the person that you attach your life to has to understand the time, the energy, mentally and spiritually, that goes into ministry. And if they don't have a heart and a love for ministry, it's going to create a tug of war. And that tug of war is going to I have a
If they don't have
friend
a heart and a love for
who,
you, that's gonna create. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
well, I
You
agree.
bet.
I agree, but here's what I'm saying is that I believe that's in the package. It's kind of to me like when you look at a car and all you want is air conditioning. You like it's gonna be hot in the summer. I know I want air conditioning, but then you also find out in the winter that you have seat warmers too. There's stuff that's in the package that may not have been in your intent or your request that I believe God puts in there. I don't believe God is gonna put you with somebody for ministry and y'all can't stand each other. I believe that God will put that bond between you into each of you, for because how can two walk together unless they agree? Through a scripture in there.
You did.
Kind of proud of myself for that.
I'm glad you did too. Um, you know what? I'm gonna leave that.
No,
I'm gonna
no,
leave. No,
no, no,
I'm gonna leave.
no. Go for it.
No,
Go for it.
I'm gonna let that one ride out. I'm just gonna go with you and just say amen to that one. Even
Why not?
see, here's my problem with Marvin.
Okay.
My problem with it is you can be with somebody and they they be as churchy or whatever as anybody else. But if they ain't in love with you, when things get rough, things get hard, there's nothing holding them there.
Oh, I agree, and that's why I say I don't think that the two are in isolation.
Well, sometimes they
I
do.
don't think
Sometimes they are.
I don't think the two are. I don't. No, I'm saying when it's the right person. You can get because there are a lot of Christian, saved, Pentecostal, filled with the Holy Ghost men that I don't want to go to Burger King with. Now let's spend the rest of my life with. So it's not.
You say Burger King.
Yes, I said Burger King. So it's not that I think that it's in isolation. I believe that when it is God. God is a God of provision. God is not a God who wants you to go lacking. God will give you what you need in a relationship. And that's why I believe I am created, you are created, each and every one of us are created to be someone's companion in a specific context that speaks to what God created us for. Because I can be with somebody, you can be with somebody, anybody can just pick somebody. But where is this person in line with where God is taking you and what visions God has given you for ministry? Because you can fall in love with a puppy dog.
Yeah, yeah, but you can but if you have purpose with somebody you ain't in love with, then purpose will not be enough to keep you. I mean,
I agree.
there needs to be a combination.
That's why I'm saying that God. I don't
She
believe
needs she
God is.
needs she needs to
I
like
don't.
you. He needs to like you. They need to be in love. They need to be
Right.
in love with
That's.
you.
I'm saying it's. I'm saying God is inclusive to. God creates a great package deal. I'm not saying that God's package. I'm not is this person is not going to walk on water because they're human, but I believe that God gives you what you need. And if we don't believe that God gives us what we need, then we got to that has to cover across the board.
Oh, that's a
We can't.
problem. That's a problem. If we don't believe that, we got an issue.
Right,
Yeah.
because if we're going to say we believe that God has some intentionality in your calling, in your gift, you mean to tell me that he won't make somebody to go with me for the journey?
I mean, evidently he will. I mean, Peter's wife, Peter's wife had to deal with Peter traveling all over the world, all over Galilee and up into Jerusalem with this Jesus guy, while she stayed at home with their sick mother-in-law, and she did, and then Jesus came and healed the mother-in-law, of course, but Peter's wife had to be accommodating to that, you know. Um, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to do these things. I guess like we start talking about God's will and our love life, it's such a personal thing that it ought to really affect our theology. I mean it.
It really should be huge in your
Right, right. I
theology.
mean, if you believe in something like strict predestination, then you ain't been in no relationships before. Your experience should tell you. Wait a minute. This can't be it because this don't
Well, so
make
let me
sense.
ask you
Go
this.
ahead.
Since you want to bring up the predestination piece, what about from the context of people that help you get prepared? So can these people that may not be the person be part of God helping to prepare you?
Well, God preparing you or allowing you to end up in situations that make you better or bring the best out of you is not a function of, I would say, strict predestination. And what I mean by that is, you know for yourself that many of the things that prepares you for who you are, you didn't have to get in them. You could have avoided them.
I'll agree. Yeah, I'll agree.
Now,
So what are your thoughts on um how interactive do you think that this, whether it's predestination or not, because I hate to hear people who, because I think they frame it the wrong way when they say this perfect will and permissive will.
mm,
I think we use those very
I,
poorly
I
to
agree.
justify some old
Bad
craziness.
decisions.
Yeah,
I
I think we
agree. I
use that
agree.
to justify some old craziness.
I would.
That's just me.
This is what I would say, Marvin. How I explain it, and this is something that we should probably, go over once or twice as we go on. How I see it is this: that God has a will, this overarching will for the world, for the universe, right? He has a cosmological will, and in His will, God is going to get His way. However He intends for things to end up, is going to happen. Now, there are very few people that play such an integral part to His will that He takes away their ability to have or engage in free will choices. But even when He takes away that ability, it's very few and far between. Most of us have free will. We have the choice to participate or not participate. Now, when we choose to participate, what then happens is we have the option, even then, We have the option of allowing the Holy Ghost to lead us. And the Holy Ghost will lead us down a path that is in God's will. But even being Holy Ghost filled and being led down a path that's in God's will, we still have the choice to make as to whether or not we follow it. Because then there are other things that interact with us as we interact with God's will. And the things that interact with us screws us up, like our desires, our attractions, our weaknesses, our proclivities. All these things interfere with us
And our
and
motives.
our
Sometimes
motives,
our
and
motives.
our motives, especially our
But
motives,
sometimes our motives can
just as
be.
bad, just as wild, right? Just as influential, right? And so what happens is all these things they play their part, and as they play their part in interacting with us, as we are trying to interact with God's will, we literally pray on ourselves because we want the miracle to happen, and that prayer is, "Your will be done in my life." For His will to be done in our life perfectly is a miracle. It's a miracle of phenomenal proportions. But people don't understand that because they don't understand what all goes into making their life. Think about this. I'm gonna use this as an example. Hopefully, I can make this example help you understand what I just said. Jesus says to his disciples, He says, "Love one another," right? And then He goes in the next chapter. He goes and he prays to God. He says, "Lord, make them one." Now, this is what I got from that. Loving one another is easier than achieving unity. Unity is going to take a miracle. Jesus prayed for unity and commanded love. You understand what I'm saying? So, so, so,
Right.
so,
And that's what I mean when
yeah.
I say the bond.
Right, right, right,
Yeah,
right, right,
I think that's the
right,
miracle.
right. But that also exists in how we go to God with our lives. The miracle is that we remain at all times in accordance with His will. That is a miracle. That we remain. That at no point in time do you get angry about the circumstances you are in because this is God's will for my life. As I have now, I'm being led by the Holy Ghost to be where I am or to be engaged with. I mean, right now, I'm in a situation right now, Margaret. I'm in a situation right now where I'm wrestling with a personal decision because I think that I'm being exploited. I think somehow I'm not in the right place, and so I'm halted between two opinions. But now what happens is, if I say to God, "Lord, Your will be done," then what I should do is take my hand off of the wheel, off of the WHEEL, the controlling mechanism, and put myself inside of God's will, the WILL, where He is the one in control, and then go from there. Now that is what I should do. And the question is,
And that's not always, that's not,
right?
are you saying that is being passive, or does that mean,
There might be,
what does that
it,
mean?
it might not be being passive. It might be being aggressive. I talked to a bishop one time, who was. It seemed as if he was
So if
pushing.
you're being aggressive, that's almost like a chips fall where they may.
No, 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 no. Let me explain it like this.
Okay.
I talked to a bishop one time who was doing some very big things and trying to make some moves and do some things in the church. This was some time ago. This was not recently. This was some time ago. And I said, "Man, I said, you are really, you're really going after this." And what he said to me was, "No, I'm not going after a thing. I'm pursuing God's will aggressively."
Mm.
So now that pretended that pretends that he already knows what God's will is and this, that, and the third, and that's fine. That is fine. If you be so bold to make that statement about your life to know perfectly what God's will is, go forward. But for those of us who don't know, we have to be passive. You can't be aggressive unless you know. When you're trying to
But
figure it
now, so
out,
are
you
you
can't be
saying
aggressive
that
with
you
it.
can or cannot know?
Oh, you can know. You can know what God has for you if you remain in His will. You can know. You can know what point B is. You can know what getting to the other side is. What you cannot what you cannot manipulate is the conditions between point A and point B. You have to deal with the conditions
Yeah.
between point A and point B. When you're making that transition between point A and point B, the Lord says, "Let's go to the other side." What you need to understand is when He says, "Let's go to the other side," that you're going to make it to the other side. Period. What you cannot control is what happens between point A and point B. And what happens between point A and point B is when your faith is tested, because your faith has to remember that he said, let's go, and we're going together. So if we're going together, he gonna get there. I got to get there, right?
Right.
But when that wind is blowing, it's like, well, duh, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Little do we know, though, sometimes the wind is blowing because it's trying to push us to our destination quicker. There's a difference. There's a difference between wind blowing and a contrary wind. You understand what I'm saying? Mom, you hang in here with me. This is a good moment, right? This is something good that's gonna help somebody. The contrary wind,
I know I'm with
the
you.
contrary wind is against you. It is against you. The contrary wind is impeding your progress. But then there's another wind that is not contrary, and it's blowing ferociously. It's blowing hard. It might be creating turbulence, but in reality, it's pushing you quicker to your destination. Jesus, why do I need to be pushed quicker to my destination? Why don't I need peace in this journey? You don't need peace in this journey because I have to get to my destination as quick as I can. There's a man over there in them tombs that need to have the devil cast out of him. I can't be sitting here waiting for you to roll me across this still water. I need some turbulence. I need some wind to push me to my destination quicker. Well, what happens? I can't stand going that fast. So, Lord, I get upset. And then God has to say, well, peace be still. And what happens is
Hmm. We slow down.
you slow down. You might get peace in the boat. Might feel good to have that peace. But that dude that really needs that miracle, he gotta wait that much longer for you to get there. You was on your way, but you got scared of the turbulence. You got scared of the wind. It wasn't a contrary wind, it wasn't against you, but you got scared of it nonetheless. Because it was uncomfortable. When you're in his will, the turbulence is just a test. When you're out of his will, the turbulence is to kill you. Trust me. The turbulence is to kill you. Peter did not say, Lord, if it be your will, let me come. Peter said, Lord, if it be you, then let me come. Well, Jesus was like, well, this is definitely me. Y'all think I'm a ghost, but it's definitely me. So Peter starts walking on the water to get to Jesus, and he notices the wind, and his exuberance got him to a place where his faith could not hold him up. And remember, we said he began to sink. How do you begin to sink in water? I don't know. Anyway. But he began to sink. But Jesus says it's okay, and he saves
But
him.
that's
Shot, shot, both shot. Just seemed like that was appropriate right there. Hey, y'all, and preachers that's watching this, that's good for Sunday morning. Y'all can use that. I'm not gonna hold it against you. If you want me to clarify it, just inbox me. I'll tell you how it works.
so um in the context of attaching one's life to another person.
Mm,
And we talk about the turbulence and the contrary winds.
mm,
Um, a lot. I listen to women who have this very fairy tale kind of, I guess, perspective on relationships. And as much as I don't believe in a quote unquote fairy tale in this um, knight in shining armor, I do believe that there are certain things that happen in a relationship that help you to endure the hard times.
okay.
Because going through hard times with somebody who's on your team is totally different from going through hard times with somebody you couldn't stand before the storm. And so when I say that I believe God is intentional and he creates, a person that is for your life, that's not just for the beautiful, wonderful days. That is for the turbulence too.
Ain't no argument for
Because
me.
life, I mean, life is going to have ups and
A lot of
downs.
ups and downs.
But but it's totally different to go through those things with somebody and say, "Hey, you know what? We are in this." Than to go through that and somebody be like, "You know what? Can I just push you on off the boat too?" And then that's one less thing I got to worry about. Those are two different mindsets that, that can happen. And so that's why I'm always like thinking in terms of why it makes sense that this person can't just be wonderful for right now. This person has to be built for the road ahead.
Mm.
um that's a truck commercial, isn't it? um
Ford
I
Tough.
just compared relationships
F-150.
to a truck.
F-150.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So but in preparing for the road ahead, you can't see the details, the dirty details of that.
Mm.
Sometimes you can't imagine where ministry or life is going to take you in the next 2 days, near less six
Oh,
months.
excuse me.
And so in that, you have to have a place of believing that God can give you the person for that journey who can be there for you, who's in that with you. And I think that's what Bishop Bell's tone was when he said, you marry for ministry. Because if I had a friend who was married. He loved the woman loved him, but they were not on the same page as far as how important things of ministry were. And it became so evident in just some not only some practical ways, but it affected ministry.
Mm.
And so you can love somebody who's not for your journey.
Well, let me
I mean,
let me back up because I want you to go back to that, but I want you made so many excellent points that I don't want to forget. There's one point you made that I think is really really big, and that
okay.
is when you're going through these storms. The issue I have with I have with the storms is that okay. Remember in the story of Jonah. All right. When
Okay.
Jonah says, "Yo, this is my fault," right? He says, "This is my fault. I was running away from God. It's my fault." Jonah's telling them it's his fault, and he's trying to get them to throw him overboard. He's trying to get them to do it. Do you know that they went through great extents to try not to throw Jonah overboard? They didn't want to get rid of him. They were intent of him staying on that ship because they did not want to get rid of Jonah, probably knowing who he was. And the thing that gets me, think about this. They said two things. One thing really got my attention. The first thing was let's try to get back to the shore and wait the storm out. They were willing to go right back to where they started, go back to point A, rather than throw Jonah overboard. Let's just get back to the shore. We'll go back to the shore, and we'll be cool. And Jonah, you'll be straight. And I'm sitting here like I said, so attached to this man in their flesh or their devotion to him for whatever reason that they would not throw him overboard. People ain't generally that loyal, you know. But when they throw Jonah overboard and they get rid of
So
Jonah,
why do you think they were loyal?
was that?
What was behind their loyalty to Jonah? Was it that they recognized that Jonah
I'm gonna tell you,
was significant? What was their
I,
reason?
I get the sense.
Because I'm always curious as to why people get invested in other people. Like, what is your reason why this is worth the investment for you?
Well, without getting too far deep into it, because we want to go to the other points you was making. But without getting too far deep into it, allow me to postulate this theory, and that is, I
Okay.
think Jonah was the T.D. Jakes of his day.
Okay.
And what I mean by that was, I believe that Jonah was one of the premier preachers of his time. The reason I believe that
Okay.
is because God required him. It's not like God didn't have somebody else.
Gave him a specific
He
task.
he he, he
Right.
made Jonah, and Jonah said no repeatedly and tried to get away from it repeatedly, and God still made him do it.
Okay, so let's not get sidetracked there. Go
Okay,
back to
okay.
your.
Oh. So the point is sometimes we don't get rid of things or people because we are attached to them. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. In Jonah's case, it was God's will that he be thrown overboard. But just in general, as a life thing, when you're with somebody in a relationship, you should be willing to go through those hard times, and you should do everything possible to not throw them overboard. That is the actual best response. That is the worst response is to throw them overboard. The dude said, "We don't want to throw Jonah overboard. His blood will be on our hands. We don't want to kill him. We don't want to kill the relationship. We don't want to kill him, man. He's important to us." But sometimes we will, when the winds get too rough and gets too hard, and you know it's somebody's fault. Jonah said, "It's my fault." When somebody takes responsibility for us, it's my fault. The question is, are you going to be loyal enough to them to stay in the situation, or are you going to say, "Well, it's your fault"?
Well, and I think maybe
Deuces.
that's the reason why they struggled with throwing him overboard.
Exactly.
Because in throwing him overboard, it seems like finality.
Right.
It seems like an
It's
ending,
over. Right.
because what God had provided is underneath the surface and you can't see that. And I think that we go into relationships with a perspective of only what we can see, not realizing that sometimes where things land, God still got provision.
Yeah, but the thing,
Whether anybody wants you to have provision or not, that provision is there. And so I think they were struggling with throwing him overboard because
uh,
it looked like finality.
so are you on the side of throw that joke overboard that he can't do right? Just throw him overboard, huh? Get rid of him, huh?
Well, when Jonah says throw
I'm
me
talking about you. I'm
overboard,
talking about forget
me,
Jonah. I'm forget Jonah. I'm talking about you in the boat. That storm is getting rough. You and your man in the boat is getting rough. Are you with like, well, it's your fault? Well, we're gonna just throw you overboard. I'm gonna make this journey by myself.
no, no.
Okay,
But I
let's
will
make
say
sure.
this. Let me reframe what you're saying. I got to reframe what you're saying,
Okay,
and you're gonna like it and hate it all at the same
I don't
time.
hate nothing. What are you talking about? What are you talking
So, so for me as a
about?
woman,
Uh huh.
there are times in a relationship when a woman very much has to take a hands off and let God teach a man certain things.
Okay,
There are some things that I don't care how many times you say it, he's not going to receive it from you.
that's true.
He's not going to get it because you said it.
Amen.
There's just a thing there.
That's true.
And sometimes when God has to deal with a man about something, women like to nurture and in some ways rescue.
Mm.
And there are some things that you have to say, okay, God, you and him have to do this.
But you're not throwing them
And
overboard,
that may
right?
feel like, that's what I was going to say, that may feel like you have left him to handle it himself. And that may not be the case because you can still pray and intercede.
Right.
But some things you have to let him and God walk out because as a woman, you can't.
But
You have to because that's what builds into his
you
manhood.
didn't throw him overboard, though,
If
right? You're not throwing him overboard.
no, it's not throwing him
Right, right. So he
overboard, but
stays in the boat.
you can't
Okay.
create in him your child either.
Okay. I ain't mad. I think you're right. You're absolutely correct. I mean, there's some things you got to
And
work out, right?
so a lot of times, especially in our culture
Mm-hmm.
today, women women make their man their child.
Okay. All right. That's next week. We're gonna start that next week. We're gonna start right there next week. We gotta go, Mark. We've been on this for a while. I like that.
Okay,
So
yeah,
so
we've
part
made
two,
we made that.
God and relationships, making your man your child. No, the problem with making your man your child.
Okay.
That's next week. All right. We gotta go, Mark. We've been on this too long now.
I know,
This is a
right?
good discussion as always.
All right.
Uh, I look forward to it. And uh, unfortunately, we haven't talked about some other things, but I think we're going to. This is going to end up being a three-part thing, Marvel. I thought it was going to be two parts. This is going to end up being.
At least 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
At least
But
3.
next week we're going to start with that. The problem with making your man your child. And then the reverse, the problem with making your child your man. Uh oh. Oh, you hear it? And expecting him not to be your fixer. Oh, we gonna talk about this next week.
You know what? See, we're gonna probably end up with about 6 of these.
We
All
gonna have
right.
6. All right, Marva.
So we're gonna have to pause it here
May
and
the
to be continued. May the Lord
watch
watch
between me and thee
between me and thee
while we
while
absent
we are absent
one from
one from
another.
another.
Take care, Marva.